weird not hearing the music. All right, welcome back. Am I loud? Welcome back to the podcast, guys. I'm not even going to attempt on the season or the episode. We are back a week-ish after Blade Show in Urbana, and we'll probably have some fun stories to talk about from there. But today we are joined by Jackson Rumble and William Stagtight.
Super close.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just going to become a thing where we never say your name correctly, but it's a thing for me at least. So we're going to spend some time talking to these guys and Marty. He's going to take a nap on the couch here next to us. Refuses to show his face. So I guess let's jump it off. We already know enough about Will, enough for too many lifetimes. Jackson is from Australia. You're a master smith.
Yes, sir.
And you came up specifically for Blade Show, or was it just that was involved in the trip?
Yeah, I mean, that was the genesis of the trip. And then, Will called me out of the blue and was like, hey, do you want to come and forge a tomahawk? I was like, can't have ever done that. No idea why me, but sure, we'll give it a go. So we went up to Warwood Tools for their hammering after the Blade Show and ended up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this the last stop and then you're just going home flying out, or?
I'm going to stop by Will's shop for a couple of days.
Okay.
And then I'm flying out, I think on the 23rd. So yeah, just a quick.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Quick time in his shop and we'll see what we can do. Should
Cool.
be fun. Yeah.
Well, give us a recap of Blade Show. We had 2 people go to Blade Show. Neither of them are on the podcast. So give us a recap of Blade Show this year. What were anything fun and exciting that you saw?
Well, I lost my phone as soon as I got to the hotel, which was awesome. It really wasn't. It really kind of ruined the first day. You know, I ran inside. Will was right in the door, gave a big hug, and realized straight away that I left it in the cab and ran back out. And by then, the cab had already gone.
Oh man!
But then, got to meet Will's mum because she helped me out trying to get it back. With no success in the end, but it was kind of a nice way to meet Will's
So you've
mum.
been out here phoneless?
Yeah, been out here phoneless, and then
Is it kind of freeing though? Like it feels nice?
It's kind of nice, but then also like of course I don't know any of my passwords to any of my accounts.
Fair.
Of course didn't do any of the backup stuff that I should have, so I blocked out of my bank account, Instagram, email, all that sort of stuff. So
oh no,
super dumb. But what are you gonna do? Yeah.
I have literally no idea what I would do.
Yeah, well, I managed to find my dad's phone number that I'd written down in my passport book from a trip when I was just 18. My mom made me write it down, being like, "You might need this number one day."
Yeah,
and I did clearly. So yeah, ended up calling dad and got most of it. Most of it sorted out. Everyone knows I'm alive. So,
okay, that's the important part. Yeah, contact has been made.
Yeah, that's okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Will, how was Blade Show for you?
Oh, man. This was probably the craziest Blade Show that I've had, or at least leading up to it was the craziest. And then the actual show was kind of meh. But we'll talk more about that. Yeah, so I tested for Master Smith this year. And leading up to that, I gave myself 2.5 months to make my 5 knives for the set. Which is not nearly enough time. And then I messed up the first month of work with a couple of bad projects. And so I had 6 weeks to make myself my Master Smith set. And I got 4 of the knives done, super happy with them. And then I had a week to do my dagger. And I drove to Blade Show this year. And so I drove with my mentor, Salem Straub. And so while we were driving over, we left on Tuesday. And Blade Show setup day was on Thursday. And so it ended up being about a 40-hour drive, and I was hand sanding on my ivory handle while we were driving. And then we got there and got checked into the hotel, got 3 hours of sleep, 3.5. I'd gotten 5 hours of sleep in the 40-hour drive on the way over.
Sure.
And 5 hours of sleep the night before that, and then not very much sleep for the week.
So you're on
that.
compound sleep loss.
Oh my.
Oh.
And so we got there, I got 3.5 hours of sleep. And then we went to Lucas O'Hara's shop, and I worked from about 10 a.m. until 6 a.m. the next day. So however many hours that is, worked on it straight. Got my dagger pretty much done. It wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, but testing started at 7 a.m. And so I was at a place where I was well, I can't do any more. I was overall, pretty happy. I think that the issues that were on it, most like 99.9% of the people who walked by wouldn't be able to tell the issues.
Sure.
The Mastersmith judges, absolutely, because they're kind of like some of the harshest critiquers in the world.
Well, they're Mastersmith judges for a reason.
Exactly. And so left Lucas's place, drove to the convention center, got out, got up to the testing room, started to unpack, realized that I had left my dagger at Lucas's house.
Oh,
and so,
boy.
yeah. And so I called Lucas. He had spent the night at a friend's place because his AC had gone out.
Oh, great.
And so I was like, hey, man, are you like, is it faster for me to drive back and grab the dagger? Or are you like close to your house and you could just drive it? He's like, it's faster for me. He's like, I'll be there in like 30 minutes. And so at that point, so we got there at 7. Turns out the judging started at 7:45. Everything had to be on the tables by 8. Lucas got there at 7:55, no clothes on, just his boxers. I had woken him up. He had hopped in his truck, again, clothesless, driven at. He certainly didn't break any laws while driving. We want to admit
He drove the maximum speed limit, the maximum amount of time possible.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, certainly did not break that. Got the dagger. And then again, drove a reasonable and legal speed to the convention center. And like, he called me because like the exit getting off, there had been a crash like in between the time that he got there and when we had gotten off. And like, so it added like 10 more minutes. So again, like 5 minutes to spare. Got my dagger on the table and then went outside, waited for the judging. I came in and they told me that I did not pass Mastersmith, which I wasn't super surprised based off the dagger. They told me that the dagger, or the handle of my dagger was not fluted. And so I got like a technical immediate disqualification failure, which so far pretty much everyone that I've talked to, they're either like, oh, that's fluting, or no, that's definitely not fluting. Turns out there's no definition for fluting.
Right.
And so to me, I thought it was fluted. The judges did not agree, but they didn't even look at it apart from that. So that was a bit of a bummer. But I definitely learned a lot from the process of building those knives.
Now, when you presented your Mastersmith set, when you present those and something like that where they disqualify you for the handle not being fluted correctly, can you take that same set and present it next year?
Theoretically, but I'm going to build a whole new set and just make it super crazy, basically. So I did really complex mosaic Damascus for pretty much all of them. And then, like I didn't go easy on it. There's like one chef's knife that I did a flat fit up on, and that was like about as simple as it gets for me. But that even wasn't like a particularly super easy knife. It had a sculpted handle and kind of a cool mosaic blade. So,
have you posted any pictures of these that we can get producer Evan to?
Nope.
To pull up. Okay, no pictures, Evan.
Sorry.
So.
I can show you pictures on my phone though.
Well, that's not going to help our listeners.
Just pull it up and see. There's one. I'm just kidding. No. So yeah. And then I, had the rest of the show that day. I was just a zombie. Of a human being
understandably.
After being awake all night. And then, but it was still a fun show. Got to catch up with a bunch of fun people, but it was a really, really slow show. I think that where the economy is at right now is just making knife buying not a particularly attractive thing for people. And I think most knife forgers experience that.
Yeah,
I don't know,
for sure.
I don't know how you guys are experiencing
so
that.
I think the top end of the market and the low end of the market are still there.
Yeah.
And just like you see with any other economy breakdown, your middles start going away. So, people are still buying knives as investments where it's like they might have it on their wall for, a looking piece or whatever, and they might have their everyday carry, but nobody's buying really high-end kitchen knives that they're going to use and abuse. They're buying things that are almost like buying gold, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm going to have this in 20 years. If I need to buy a house or something, I can sell it. Yeah. And it's almost like having an asset.
Yeah.
We've noticed that too with our sales where the stuff, $3,000, $4,000, the stuff in that range still sells perfectly fine. Our higher end presses, our double-sideds and our 25s are still doing just fine. And the 16s are kind of dwindling. And I don't know, I haven't looked into it enough to see if it's like people just see the price point and they're like, well, for this much extra money, I can get 25 tons or 60 tons as opposed to 16. or if it's because we're losing that middle market customer. But you definitely see it in not just the knife market, but everywhere else.
What's the price on the 60?
On the 60?
Yeah.
The 60, I believe, is $16,995.
That's such a good deal.
16.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
16,995, and that's with a DPC 10 horsepower power pack.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's the Screaming Mamba Jamba.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's pretty hard to beat.
For the same tonnage from other companies, you're paying about 18 to 19,000, and it does not come with DPC.
Yeah.
And most of the other brands don't even come with limit switches. So
I don't know the last time that I forged on a press without a digital press controller, just because all of my friends are cool. But when I go the last time I forged on one without a press controller, I was I forgot how to do it because it's just so much better.
It starts as, oh man, this foot pedal's super cool. And then you have to forge without a foot pedal and you're like, what a bummer.
Yeah.
And then you get used to the DPC, and I'll go to events and stuff where they already have one of our presses, and that's why they invite us out. And I have to do, after getting used to the DPC, then I have to forge on a 16 with just hand controls. And it's like, oh, people live like this. and it's so spoiled of me. And, there's still great machines. I'm not, anybody that owns a 16 ton, I'm not talking trash about your press. There's still great machines. It's just, I'm
so
spoiled.
used to relying on, it's basically, it's just really good KISS blocks, basically.
Right. Well, and it's also like having
that,
a McMaster car login. If you don't have a McMaster car login and you have to find every single bolt or valve that you're looking for, it's so annoying. And then that first time it's like, oh, I can just type this in and it'll be here tomorrow before 10 o'clock. Oh, and then they don't carry something, so you have to order it from somewhere else, and you feel like you've gone back in time 80 years. It's wild.
Well, yeah. I mean, this week was the first time I've used the DPC.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. I've seen them, but I've never used them, and it just blew my mind. I need one.
We've got a couple down in Australia. One guy that I've been talking to on the phone with is making the curriculum that we talked about for the national certification, which is cool. There's another guy that builds presses, and he uses our DPC on his presses that he builds. And then there's also a couple people that have imported them, but they're not, for as handy as they are, I don't think that, because not every person that runs out of their home shop needs it. They don't really get the attention that kind of our press is and everything else does. It's like people see it as an add-on, but it really makes it a completely different machine.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Yeah. I seriously need one now. I think that's the first thing I'm going to do is go home and try and sell some knives.
Okay.
And try and get one, because it's a game changer for sure.
It's amazing how much time it saves you on the top end of things. Even if you don't, know how to set it correctly, you might not save as much time. But when I'm finishing out a bar or something like that, not having the press go up 2 inches and then come back down.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It would be fun to calculate how much time it takes, or how much time it saves to just have that top limit set. I think over the course of forging in a day, it's got to save you half an hour.
Right.
Crazy.
Right. Especially on a 25.
Yeah.
Where, they're not slow by any means. You could 2 inches per second, 2.5 inches per second. But even with that, you have an 8-inch stroke.
Yeah.
And that's what, 3 seconds to get down. If you're forging a knife, you're almost at the bottom die.
Yeah.
So, you're saving three seconds per cycle.
Yeah.
I just talked to another blacksmith who will remain nameless, but they have another brand of press who will remain nameless. But in their function, it returns to the top every time, and there's no way to keep it from returning to the top. And he said that is the only thing that he would change about the design. Everything else is fine. He can work around it.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful machine, wonderful company, but the fact that it returns to the top wastes so much time because he's working on knives. He's working on 1/4 inch to half-inch pieces, and it's like a 14-inch stroke.
So infuriating. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, boy.
Oh man. Yeah, no, it is fun, especially when someone who already knows how to use a press and knows how to forge uses one for the first time. I love getting to see that.
Yeah, and super easy to figure out. Didn't take long at all.
Well, we can switch it into millimeters for you too.
So that'd be good. Yeah, that was the longest thing for me. I'm trying to do the conversion in my head.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a 1 second switch. You hit settings and then millimeters.
Yeah, settings, millimeters.
Yeah, cool. That's good.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
that all figured out.
Sweet. That's good.
For our international homies. Well, enough talking about us. Jackson, what, obviously you're a master bladesmith. You came out to Atlanta to hang out with other blade makers. Did you get specifically into blade making, or did you get more into metalwork or blacksmithing? How'd you get your start in kind of this handmade world?
Yeah, well, through school, always did shop classes, like everyone that I could.
All your fingers?
Yeah, still.
Okay.
Still pretty good. I'm pretty lucky in that way. So I finished school and I started working in a sawmill, which was pretty cool. That was local. And then my mum brought me a knife making class for my 18th birthday. So in Australia, right in my town, happens to be like the biggest knife making school in Australia now.
Okay. Give him a shout out.
Yeah, Tharwa Valley Forge. I used to work there. So, I know him pretty well. And but back then it was just Karim, the boss. So he was doing maybe it's like 20 classes a year, maybe even less than that, only on weekends. So I did that, and it just like combined wood and metal work. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then working at the sawmill, I had access to a million offcuts of nice timber, which I hoarded away.
Yeah.
And I still got all that sort of stuff. And then Karim was also offering Damascus classes. So I did that about 6 months later on his old homemade press and also on a terrifying spring hammer, like the ones with like a pack of leaf springs on the top.
Yep.
Yeah, I hated that thing. That was and literally two sledgehammers for the dies. It was atrocious, but it worked. It worked. And then I realized, hey, we can stick this metal together. We can make all these patterns. I'm like, well, that's it. That's what I want to do. And then I sort of commandeered Dad's hobby workshop and made some really dodgy equipment. I
feel like that's like a rite of passage.
I think it is.
Everybody has to make some dodgy equipment, as you call it.
For sure, yeah.
I think that's the nice way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it was a handheld belt sander for timber, and I had it mounted up in a vise so it was facing me, and I just went through a million aluminium oxide belts that were just not meant to do what I was trying to make them do. Maybe like 10 belts per knife or something like that on unhardened steel. It was absurd. And then I eventually got like my first 2x72 single speed, pretty average again, but better than a belt sander.
Right. We're making progress.
We're getting up there, but I didn't have a tool rest or anything like that. So it was all freehand grinding at that point. And about 4 years later, Karim contacted me and was like, do you want a job? And I was like, absolutely, making knives full time. So, from there, the learning curve was really steep. I started, 6 days a week making knives, basically. My first project was 200 of these 8-inch chef knives with a 2.5-inch heel out of like whatever 4 millimeters is in freedom units, whatever
160, 160,000.
Yeah. So, a lot of material to take off, so that was my first big job. And that's how I learned to grind properly, I would say. Yeah. And then, the whole idea of getting me there was to expand the school. So train me as a teacher, and then a few other guys came on. And now it's by far the biggest knife making school in Australia.
Cool.
Yeah, they run classes basically back to back.
And did they encourage you to join the ABS and become a master smith for your teaching?
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
Like, Karim really bugged me until I did my apprenticeship, joined the ABS. And then I kind of got more serious about it. And I decided I needed to shorten that gap, the 3-year apprenticeship gap. So I did a class at a New England School of Metalwork.
Cool.
With Nick Rossi and Christoph Darringer. So that 2-week class, shaved a year off, and then I tested for JS the next year, which was scary stuff. Let me tell you, it's a big deal to make these knives and then fly halfway around the world to try and present them.
Now, are there any certifications in Australia, or did you have to come to America to get them?
I'm part of the Australian Knife Makers Guild. I'm actually the vice president at the moment. Yeah, so sorry for the guys. I haven't replied to all the emails while I've been away. But at that point, there wasn't really any, like testing, like levels or levels to the guild. You were kind of just in.
You just kind of,
yeah. It's changed now. Like there's multiple rounds of testing, kind of like the ABS. A little less stringent than the ABS. But so once I got to that point, the next logical step was the ABS.
Okay.
And my mentor, Sean McIntyre, is a master smith, so it kind of, it made sense. But that was like, when I first started that, it was, someone once told me that you're not ready to be a journeyman smith or be a master smith until you start the process. And I totally agree with that, because my first hunter, like little 4-inch hunter, took like a month and a half of like painstaking, like freaking out about everything.
For JS?
Yeah, for JS. It was like, and everyone's looking at me like, man, it's a small knife. You really should be, you really. Yeah, see, I didn't even put it in my set, right? Like it was kind of like the top one, but it had ironwood in it. So I spent a month and a half on it and didn't even use it. So and then that was the rest of my set. You can see the keyhole there. Just before I started this, Rodrigo came to Australia for the Australian Knife Making Symposium.
That's Rodrigo Sfredo.
Yeah, sorry, Rodrigo Sfredo. And did a keyhole class.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it came at like
perfect timing.
Perfect timing, And I'd sort of been told at that point, to take it easy and make simple knives that could be easily judged. And then Rodrigo basically said, no, make whatever you want, show you and your work. And so that really, it pushed me to kind of push the boundaries a little bit and make what I wanted to make.
So you found that to be more like encouraging and liberating to have some freedom in your knives?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
cool.
So, like a keyhole is not really a smart thing to put into judging. I think there's lots of extra places you can be judged on, but I felt like that's the work that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it made sense to me to put that in. And I actually got the Kiesler Award that year for the best set presented for that knife. So,
cool.
It was totally worth it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, went back. I think that year there was another guy from Australia who tested for JS. Everyone knows him as Toe Ball in Australia. And he likes to say that he was the fifth and I was the sixth because he got called into the room before me. So technically he's, the fifth JS and I was the sixth.
Oh, okay.
So he's lording that over me. Even now I'm a master.
It's like twins when one is born 7 minutes earlier.
Exactly, yeah. He's never going to let that one go.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, and then basically I stayed working at Thar Valley Forge for another couple of years. And it was great. I pretty much owe my entire career to working at that place. Learning curve was, steep but shortened. I've only really been making knives for like 6 years full time. The first few years weren't really, it might have been like 5 knives in a year.
Sure,
kind of thing. So,
well, when you do it for a living, it opens up not only you have access to the right tools, to the right education, but also you're making knives for a living now.
Absolutely.
So you have to make more.
Yeah, and you have to make more and have to make them better. There's no choice.
Yeah, it's like you're not gonna. It doesn't matter if you're flipping burgers or you're an account manager or marketing guy. You're always gonna want to challenge the last thing you did. So
for sure, yeah.
I think that's something that. And I don't want to say this offensively, but a lot of the guys that make knives in their free time, they beat themselves up a lot about like they're not progressing the way that somebody is who is working full time.
Sure.
And even when you get into these upper levels, these upper echelons of guys that are working full time, it's like sometimes it seems like they're reinventing the wheel, and they're growing so much. And these guys that are out of their garages just doing it in their free time, maybe it really is their passion and they're trying to get full time, but they beat themselves up about not getting better faster. And it's like, it really just does take repetitive motion, doing it 1,000 times.
It does. Yeah. And, I was just fortunate enough to get paid by someone else to do that.
Yeah.
There's no chance I could have sold enough knives to keep that up full time.
Yeah.
So I'm forever thankful, for Thar Valley Forge for that. But, then a couple of years later, I think it was, sort of end of COVID in Australia. So maybe like 2021, the Thar Forge was getting pretty busy, classes back to back. And that was also my workshop that I was working out of. So, the space was getting tighter and tighter, which is fair enough. That's their entire business is running classes. So I got the opportunity to move to my current workshop with a friend of mine who's an ex-student of mine, actually, believe it or not. And he has like a prototyping workshop. Cool. So I work there a couple days a week for him. And then I run my business out of his workshop. Because I have access to all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like laser cutters and 3D printers, and not that I can run any of it, but like there's cool stuff in there for sure. Yeah. And then, last year I tested for MS and passed, but it was like, kind of similar to you, Will. Like I set aside all this time. I had 6 months set aside, and then unfortunately a guy at work, I had a heart attack. He's fine. He's okay. But we had a bunch of infrastructure that we were building that I kind of had to take over. So my time period got shorter and shorter.
Right.
And, you start out, you're like, hey, I got 3 months. I got all this time. And then you kind of like, you get closer and closer and closer, and you start, panicking, getting, more and more, on edge. Like, it was easily the most stressful time of my life, doing like at least 12-hour days every day. That's my set there. Yeah. So I'm still pretty happy with it. I still like looking at it. But I very nearly didn't test that year. I finished it all up.
You were going to put it off?
Well, so basically I got down to the very last stage, which was sharpening, and I'd sharpened all of them but my MS Quillian dagger. So I had a spare one, and the very last process was sharpening. I nicked the ricasso. And this was about 2 days out, and it was atrocious. It would have failed completely. So I had to basically rebuild it from the get-go. So I had to knock all the pins out, pull the handle off, and regrind everything to make it even again. And in that process, I wrecked the guard. I had to scratch the guard, which was hot blued. So then I had to take it all apart again, re-hot blue it, re-glue it back together. And, it was awful. Like, I had my dad calling up every hour to check on me to see if I was okay. Same with my girlfriend as well. Like, and I was just a hot mess. Yeah. An absolute hot mess. And I ended up finishing with about an hour to go to my flight. So I finished at 2 a.m. We had to leave at 3 a.m. to drive to the airport.
How long is the flight?
Yeah, so, the main flight from Sydney to somewhere on the East Coast is about 14 hours. So it's a 3 hour.
That's not as bad as I thought it'd be.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's fine. Well, it's not good, but
it's not great.
It's fine. So it was 3 hours to the airport and then 14 hours, and then it's usually another 4-hour flight to Atlanta, depending on where you fly into. So it's usually about 25 hours of travel time by the time you add in layovers and stuff like that. But this dagger, I literally glued it up, and it still had tape and globs of epoxy all over it. I just chucked it in my bag and then had to deal with that in Atlanta when I got there.
Yeah.
So, it was awful. Really, really bad. But thankfully I passed.
Yeah.
And so it's the best and the worst experience of my life, I would say, is doing the MS set.
So it was worth it because of the outcome? The struggle was worth the outcome?
Yeah, I guess it, it made it a bit sweeter when I passed, all the effort that went into it.
Sure.
And it was something that I'd really, I'd pretty much dedicated my life to in the 6 months leading up to it. So, it made it all worthwhile. And, I'm still pretty proud of that set. So that's cool.
It's a good looking set. Is it still up? It's not up anymore, but it is a good looking. It is up now.
Yeah.
It's a good looking set.
So that the dagger with the sort of keyhole blackwood handle, that's integral. So that whole piece at the front's all one piece with the cutouts. And that took about 2 months of the 6 months that I had to build that dagger. So, I'm pretty happy with him still.
Great.
Yeah, and and then, last year was fantastic. I just made knives full time, and loving it. Yeah, I'll keep going for as long as I can.
Yeah, It's something that you started in, like you said, in the mill, and then you kind of married the knives to it and whatnot. Is it something that you feel like you're kind of you're checking boxes off of milestones, or does it feel like you're attaining goals? I don't know how to word that. If it's just like, this is something you are still actively pursuing to get better at, to grow at, or does it feel like, all right, I'm a mastersmith. Now I can start selling knives. Now I can kind of work on the marketing of my business, who my forge is as.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like a career now. Okay. Before it didn't. It felt like something I liked doing, but I never really took it as seriously as I could have. And now that I am a mastersmith, it kind of it makes me think, maybe I can do this full time as a career that I'm going to be able to continue doing for a long time. you know, so I take it much more seriously now than I did before, I would say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you gave your story very eloquently. I don't think I have any questions of
Cool, good.
Of if anybody does have any questions. It's is it just Rumble_knives?
Yeah, Rumble _
Rumble_knives on Instagram. Give them a follow.
Yeah, and that's Star Valley Forge. Check them out as well. If you're in Australia, I really recommend, or internationally if you want to come over, but they do some great work. And especially if you're trying to get into knives and you maybe don't know where to start, these are the guys to go see.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, what would have been some experiences up here in always on the podcast? I get the most phone calls. Would have been some of the experiences with blade makers up here that have you found like there's is there like a rivalry of like, you know, like, oh, you guys down there in the South, or because I know that when I talk to guys from Australia in the blacksmithing community, there's a lot of like, well, we do it this way. And they have questions. It's not necessarily rivalry, but this is the traditional way of doing it in Australia. We noticed that you guys do it this way. One of the things the guy brought up was we make our dies out of 4140. And he was asking why our presses have heat treated hardened steel. A lot of the presses he had worked on were mild steel. And so like, do you have that where you're coming up here and people are giving you crap for stuff that you learned down there? Or
I think it's getting maybe a little bit like earlier on, because it was kind of before the knife supply companies in Australia sort of existed. It was much harder to get things. You know, so when you say like things are made out of mild steel, it's because it was really hard to get hardenable steel, or really any information about how to deal with it. It's much more difficult than mild steel to deal with when you're making stuff. So definitely at the start it was a bit like, yeah, we're dealing with what we have. Which I feel like is the sort of thing that's happening in Brazil and South America. I'm constantly blown away by what those guys are doing with the equipment and resources they have.
Right, which is very limited.
Yeah, I'm just in awe of how incredible their work is.
Yeah,
like it's makes me want to quit. Basically, like, yeah, incredible. But I wouldn't say there's too much rivalry.
Okay.
From what I can see, most people want to get down there. They say, how can I get down to Australia and come check it out. And one thing we do in Australia is we like to bring out international masters and people at the top end of their work craft to do the symposiums and stuff like that. So maybe we will get some more of you guys down.
I want to go.
Looking at this guy over
here. Very much so.
Yeah.
Do you live in the scary part of Australia or the pretty part?
I mean, it's all scary to most people. Like when you say there's snakes that'll kill you in the backyard, most people freak out.
Yeah.
But then I freak out when I hear there's bears or mountain lions or whatever.
I was driving home yesterday and there was just a coyote puppy playing in the middle of the road, and his mom was on the side of the road watching.
Was it Logan's dog?
No, it was an actual coyote.
Not just half.
Oh. Cool. Well, what has been your favorite part about this trip so far? And you can't say anything nice about Will.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything nice to say about Will, so that's it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Will's been great. The Warwood Tools thing, which was basically it was their 170th anniversary of operating, which I find incredible to begin with. And they're using these huge hammers, like 3,000 pounds.
Yeah, 3, 4, huge.
Yeah, these big board hammers, and they're using closed dies to make sledgehammers and axes and all kinds of stuff.
They make 12 up to 20 pound.
Yeah, crazy. You know, and I walk into that shop and it's probably pretty similar to how it was back in the day.
Yeah,
and they're still manufacturing tools, which I find awesome. It's and you see these guys, huge billets of steel. There's mess everywhere. There's scale flying everywhere, and they're pumping out these tools. Someone said they made 130,000 tools last year.
I believe it.
Crazy to me.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'd never been in an environment like that.
The quantities of steel that they order into.
Yeah. Whole runs of steel.
Yeah, they're getting in an order of 400,000 pounds of steel this week.
Yeah.
Evan, there's some wild videos on their Instagram of them drop Warwood tool,
Yeah.
them drop forging.
That's producer Evan to you,
PE?
Evan.
No,
Yeah. I think there's one.
We got the chance to. I can't remember how we got involved with them in the first place, but we got to be kind of homies with them, and then Chris ended up buying a 120-ton press from us.
Yeah.
He talks
and
about it. He loves it.
Fell in
loves
love
it.
with
Yeah.
forging.
Yeah.
And they just released a blacksmithing line of hand tools. I don't know if it's a full line of hand tools or if it's just hammers, but they just released it. They're trying to get more word out. But then when I talked to younger Chris at Abana, he was like, dude, we would love to get this in front of people and get it marketed and get it fully released, but we're just so busy in doing everything else.
There's one of the board hammers running.
And this guy makes it look so casual, but that thing is like, I don't know, 3 stories tall and just means business.
And probably goes like 10 or 15 feet down into the ground.
We did just do, we put out a video of a shop tour from them.
Oh, you did?
On
Yeah, okay.
YouTube.
Yeah.
If you guys want to check that out after this podcast, it's a
machine
very
shop
cool
was
video.
also unreal.
Yeah.
Their machine shop? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you were talking about Dake.
No.
No,
What?
so
We also did a tour of Dake, and you guys can look that up on YouTube. Dake's video was really sad because it was a guy who was really, really passionate about what he was doing. He started off as a janitor, or it was something kind of low level, right? And then he worked his way up to an engineer. It's been so long since we've done that, but they got bought by another company, and that company just essentially started piecing them out, and getting rid of them, to the point where now Dake is still in business. They still make great products, but the facility that he's at is essentially just an assembly area.
Right.
And you could hear it in his voice when he's telling stories about, like, you know, he took pride in what he did. He supported American manufacturing, the things that were on your table at home, the TVs that you used, the cars, all that stuff. He was designing machines that helped make that. So listening to him talk about American manufacturing and how important it is, you hear a lot of people talk about local manufacturing and American manufacturing. I know the guy I was talking to in Australia is really big on Australian manufacturing. You hear people talk about that from an economic standpoint, but you don't really hear people talk about it from a cultural standpoint. You know, you don't hear about the pride of communities. When I was growing up, we had GM here in town. I know this sounds really silly, but we also have Red Gold Tomatoes, which is the largest producer of tomatoes in America. And people are like really proud of that stuff. And then when you lose those jobs and you lose your connection to how you help provide for the community, you lose a lot of your culture in it. And that's where you get these kind of busted up towns, you know, for lack of better words, spiritually. So places like Warwood and Scotchman and these places that are still providing American-made manufacturing, and they employ like the entire town. So cool to me.
yeah, it was awesome. And the guys that worked there, seemed to really like working there and seemed to really like what they were doing. That one machinist had been there for like
46 years.
40 something years. Yeah, running the same machines, which were incredible, by the way. Like these mills that were, twice as tall as me, running huge cutters, taking these chips that, they're pretty scary chips. Let me tell you. Because they make all their dies in-house, right? So all of their drop forging dies, fixing all the machines, all that sort of stuff is done in-house. So they really are. Like,
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So
they are.
smallest
That's the
mill,
smallest
too.
mill.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one right next to it, which is huge.
Yeah.
Huge, that one. So, it was just really cool to be a part of, that weekend. And the whole idea, speaking to Chris, is that, let's get eyes on what's happening here. And that's what we were doing. Forging the tomahawks. That video will probably come out pretty soon. I imagine.
I would assume so.
They had a film crew there.
I think, Evan, they're doing the raffle at the end of the month.
An auction.
Auction
End of the month.
Auction at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all the tomahawks that were made will be finished and then auctioned off.
Okay.
We were competing against the Coal Ironworks crew too. So
Yeah.
you guys like tomahawks. you
There's
should buy
our
ours.
homie Gnome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these hammers are pretty cool. Like,
I can't believe how hard they hit.
yeah.
And this is like one of the oldest designs of mechanical hammers, like ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think Helves are the oldest mechanical hammer design, but the Bradleys specifically were one of the first produced mechanical hammer designs in America.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like when you look at older buildings, they don't have the headroom like we have right now.
No.
So you've got to build long, not tall.
Yeah.
And it just like simply the machining on it is a lot less complicated than building a upright configured mechanical.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
Super
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, like I haven't had the chance to use many mechanical hammers. You know, We don't really have many in Australia that are kind of working. So, I mean, it was pretty intimidating running those hammers because they're different. But man, for a 100-pound hammer, they hit really hard.
Yeah,
really hard.
The thing, and I've probably said it on this podcast 50 times, but the thing about hammers that really separate it from presses in my mind isn't necessarily, I know the function's different. I'm going to get a bunch of comments saying they're two different tools, and they are. But I can walk up to any press, know how to run it just fine. Up, down, we're good to go. Every hammer has its own little personality. So when you get a hammer that big that you're not familiar with, and it's your first couple times on it and you're learning its personalities, that's so scary.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And while we're being filmed as well. Like,
Right, yeah.
Like these guys are writing out faces and we were like, trying to look cool while we're using these machines
You
for
got
the
to
first
ignore
time.
the stink face.
Exactly, yeah. And when you make a miss hit, you're like, yeah, no, I meant to do that. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You just like quickly grind off the rag that you caused on it. But I had a great time. I had a great weekend there. Yeah.
Did you have fun, Will?
No.
You've been pretty silent over there.
Yeah, no, it was that place is amazing, and it's like cool culture built around it. Yeah, it sounds like the Azers really like kind of saved Warwood and like brought like good business to a really cool facility. And so I think that what they're doing there is awesome, and I think they're going to have some really really unique opportunities with like some direct to consumer stuff, and then splitting that along with their like wholesale stuff. I think that's going to be like continue to be just a really cool shop for a very long time. And so I'm excited to have gotten to know them and to hopefully build a big relationship there. Hopefully they continue to do that hammer in, because that was cool. There's cool folks there from all over the country, all over the world. So yeah, that's definitely like a special place. And then, and we got to have like a good road trip apart from that. We spent a couple days with Jason Knight, who I think he's probably been on the podcast a couple of times.
I think once or twice. Yeah, just once.
He's just a wild person.
Yeah.
And like, just lots of fun.
You just get, you get there and you just hang on.
I love what I refer to as Jason off the clock.
Yeah.
When you talk to him when he's teaching classes or when he's in like kind of a professional setting, he's very, very still kind of wild. But off the clock Jason is just, you never know. In the middle of a story, he'll just stop telling it and start telling another one.
Yeah.
And you never get a conclusion from the story you were invested in.
Yeah.
And he's got this entourage of people that just kind of keep showing up.
Yeah, his community of folks around there is
super cool.
Awesome. Brandon Franklin and his wife, and Jason had one of his collectors and friends up there, Dr. Dan. Had some of his family there too. It's awesome. We went and hung out with Kurt for a morning too.
Kurt Holland. Okay.
Yeah.
We've got too many Kurts.
Yeah, that's
life.
fair. That's fair. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Kurt Holland.
Can stay though. He
can stay. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we got a little bit of a collaboration thing we're gonna try and do, which should be cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We won't show it at all.
Is it top secret?
We'll tease it a little bit here and there. I think. But I'm super excited about it. I think it's gonna be sweet. So yeah, hopefully for Blade Show next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can have that sorted
cool.
out.
Very interesting.
I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah. Should be fun.
I'm not a big knife guy, but Kurt's one of the guys who keeps me interested in knives. His stuff is, I think he's one of those guys that is constantly getting so much better every time he posts that I really like staying up to date on him. And then also after meeting him 2 or 3 times, he's just a genuinely good human
Super
being.
nice guy.
And I wish I had more people like him around me.
Yeah.
So, cause Evan's not that way.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah.
So bad.
Evan.
Yeah.
The worst.
Man.
I love when Evan doesn't have a mic.
Defend yourself, Evan. Come on.
Yeah, he can't defend himself. He can mute us, I guess. This whole
true,
part of the podcast can just be like a buzz tone.
Cut out, and then there's some old embarrassing video.
Like when we announced the power hammer with you and we put the train wreck through it. Cool. Well, so Will, you said you wanted to talk about Blade Show and what went on this year, and you said that it was just kind of like it felt stagnant.
Yeah,
blade show this year?
For our group of people, for folding knife guys, sold out. Of course, they always do.
Yeah.
But yeah, for our group, knife forgers, it was a pretty rough year. I think like 4 knife forgers, like bladesmiths, that really like sold good knives. Like Quisenberry sold out. Dino Tom Franco sold out. Marty had a great time. He came to Blade Show for the first time. Look at that.
He thought about it. He thought, he was like, I heard my name. I'm thinking.
Marty?
Nope.
Huh? On the podcast? Okay. He's going.
The parents aren't home.
Right back to bed.
Dog on the podcast.
Yeah, and then like I think like Kelly Vermeer Vela sold, like, seems like she did well, but like really like most people, I think just had a rough year. I think it's just like election year. The economy's not like screaming hot right now, kind of uncertain, and yeah, so it was it was a little rough.
So what? So you obviously think it's the economy and different weird factors. And as we mentioned, we have a lot of guys out in the Instagram world who are now getting blocked Instagram for not being able to post knives and their content being taken down. Do you have any advice to these guys who, maybe they're not full-time, maybe they're trying to sell a couple knives a week or a couple knives a month just to help pay the gas bill or whatever? What are some of the tactics that, if you were in that position, that you would do to try to stay on top of the fold?
It's really hard. As much as you can. So for one thing, my account is also like not fit for public viewing or whatever. If someone doesn't follow me, tries to look up my name, you can look up my name. You spell out the full username, Will_Stelter. And even though my account's verified and I have 142,000 followers,
Sweet
still
bread.
have to scroll down to like the very bottom to find it. So you can find it, but it doesn't pop up.
I think it was Neil I was talking to the other day said that his is age verified now. So the user has to verify they're above 18 to follow him.
That doesn't help though, I don't think, from what I've heard. It doesn't make it so that people can look up your name, like look you up. And so we might have to go back to, it's hard because like my advice was going to be go to shows to meet people. But obviously right now, like the shows for the last year have been real hard. And like most people that I know haven't done well at shows.
Yeah.
And it's like a big contrast to like talking to guys that were going to shows 20 years ago. And they're like, oh yeah. Like he's like talking to Josh Smith. He's like, man, if I didn't sell out in 5 minutes, he's like, I was having a bad show. Or like, I don't know if it was that fast. He's like, if I didn't sell out by the end of the first day, I was feeling bad. Right.
Right. Yeah. Feeling a little anxious.
And I've never sold well at shows. I've always sold very well online. But for whatever reason, like I've never sold out at a show. I've sold out driving home from a show, like sell a piece or two at a show and then drive home and sell 5 pieces on the drive back. But
yeah, we get that a lot where we'll go to shows, and we just recently switched to selling our demo presses. So we used to take a double-sided press to every show and people would say, hey, how much for it? And it's like, well, this is our shop press. And we didn't really ever get anywhere with it, and it was just kind of annoying. So we started taking out 16 or 25-ton H-frames. They're a little bit more manageable, and we have a little bit better ability to offer those at a more pull-the-trigger kind of price point.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we've had some good success with the shows. I went to CBA, and I sold an induction and a press within,
as the proud new owner of a 25-kilowatt Coal Iron Works induction forge from the Warwood Hammer-In. Good job. Thank you.
So
excellent idea.
We went to that show and we sold both of those. Yeah. But we do get more over the past 2 weeks. I get phone calls that are like, "Hey, I saw you at Abana. Hey, I saw you guys at Blade Show. I saw you at CBA." And it's also guys that already have presses come out and they want to see the new dies that we have.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of the follow up of, "Hey, I saw your guys' new punch and stripper set out at Abana. That was really neat. I'm going to go ahead and buy one." And then I also just kind of keep an eye on where people are ordering from. So even if they never call us and it's like, I sold, say 3 or 4 presses last week in Pennsylvania, I was in Pennsylvania for a show. So there's probably not happenstance,
Sure.
Some of those bigger national shows make it harder because people travel for them.
Sure.
But yeah, sorry to cut you off on asking for your advice, but
no, so what I'd say is, I think that generally, and it kind of depends on like the realm of knives that like the price point that Jackson and I sell knives at. It's a little bit different than like Joe Schmo's not going to like walk over and drop $2,500 on a chef's knife for the most part. Maybe if you're in like Jackson Hole or something like that, or like somewhere very, very expensive to live. But like for the most part, I think that like just building good community like with people around you. I know a lot of people that sell a lot of knives in kind of like the $500 and like around there, that price point to like people in their community.
Right.
Like, you know, good working knives, that sort of thing. And so it depends on, you know, it's very much case by case, but I'd say building community, whether that's, and that's always what it's been about. That's how you sell knives is like, if you're not a nice person to talk to and you're like just very unpleasant, you're going to have a really hard time selling a knife at a show.
Sure.
It's a little bit easier to hide behind the internet and be a very unpleasant person and sell a knife. But if you have good community, whether that's online or at a knife show and you meet knife collectors or, you know, where you live, those are just all places to build community to sell knives. Because people are buying a piece of you when they buy your knife. Maybe they just like really like the knife and they hate you, but that's, I think, a very uncommon situation.
I feel like when people buy something that's handmade, they want to buy a piece of somebody they respect.
Exactly. And so if you have community around you that, you know, is doing the kind of, that is capable of purchasing the kind of work that you can produce, that's the best way to do it. Word of mouth is always going to be a far more valuable advertising tool than, you know, a paid advertisement on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
we've got a buddy named Greg that does really well at farmers markets. What he does is he'll set up, and you've probably met Greg before. Big beard.
That's all of us.
Yeah.
Blacksmith?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He sets up and he'll sell. He's got like different steps through the process where it's like, this is a knife shape and you have to grind it, heat treat it, put a handle on it. This is without a handle. This is with a handle. He'll have, you know, different concoctions. And so if somebody only has, say, $200 and they want to buy a knife, well, they can buy it and then finish it themselves, and then it's a fun project. Or they can put a custom order in. And so he kind of meets the customer where they're at, and he's had a lot of really good success with that. So in a place like, I don't know, you said Jackson Hole. I've never heard of that. Hey, bud.
Never heard of Jackson Hole, Wyoming?
Nope.
It's like one of the wealthiest places
now we get to see him
in the world.
No, I'm dirt poor. They don't even let me hear about rich places. Like I'm on that blocked list. No. But around here it'd be like Carmel. So Carmel is a pretty affluent neighborhood, and I would say that if you went to their farmer market and had between $200 and $800 knives, it would be very easy to sell.
Yeah.
So the advice that I got, or not that I got, but that I overheard was there was a guy at a blacksmithing event that I went to recently, and he brought so many hammers, all the hammers. And they weren't, I don't even think they were his hammers, but he brought a bunch of hammers to a blacksmithing event. And the guy was like, you're not going to sell those. And the guy selling was like, well, why not? He was like, because we make our own hammers. You went to a blacksmithing event to sell hammers. You know, like there are blacksmiths. I've bought a few hammers. I'm sure you've bought hammers, right? But for the most part, when you go to the smaller kind of local shows. I've
actually never bought a hammer. I only have custom hammers, but they're all from my friends. But
okay, cool. Sick. Okay, Will. But anyway, I think one thing that knife makers can do makes it a little bit easier is go to places where there's not a ton of other knives. People selling fruits and vegetables and whatever at farmers markets, but there's not a bunch of other knives. When you go to Blade Show, you're in competition with, 600 of the best knife makers in America?
Sure. I think, it used to be, though, that, like, it's like going to sell produce at a farmer's market.
Yeah.
Is how, you know, you got to kind of, like, you know, walk the line there between, like, if you go to, you know, sell your cabbages at an MMA fight, you might not have such a good time at it.
Well, right? If the fight's bad, you can throw the cabbage.
That's actually bad example. You're right. If you go to sell cabbages at a blacksmithing event, you might not do so well.
Sure. We like meat.
What's that?
We like meat.
Exactly.
We're big meat eaters.
Exactly. And so you got to find the right line. But really, I think it's like, you gotta build community and make stuff to suit the community My dog just popped.
Nice. Yeah. Real classy dog.
It smells real bad.
I think that's just Anderson in general.
That wasn't even a cough. That was like a burp and a cough.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. But yeah. And it depends because like, again, once you kind of get into that upper echelon, kind of got to figure out other ways.
It's tough. Yeah. Like, I guess my biggest advice is don't go full time if you don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people say, when can I go full time? When can I do this? Like, if you don't have to, I would not.
Yeah.
I
Right.
completely agree with that.
Like, it just adds a level of pressure that can't.
Do you feel like it takes away from the fun and the art of it if you're doing it to pay your bills?
100%. Yeah. 100%. Like, like I'm not full time. I work 2 days a week at my other workshop, so I've got at least a minimum stream of money coming in so so I'm not turfed out in the street, like example is I had a time when I just, for some reason, I couldn't heat treat anything. I was breaking everything and I never really even figured out why. Maybe it was
Well, it's because you didn't use Brandon.
probably, yeah.
Brandon would have heat treated it for you.
Right. But think about this, right? So I couldn't make a knife that worked for 2 months. Right. So I was losing steel. I was losing money. I couldn't make any money for 2 months. And had that have been my full-time job, I would have been in like trouble.
Yeah.
Especially early on in my career, I don't have a huge, stash of money that I can just dip into, So, people always ask me, when can I go full-time? When should I do it? And, if you don't have to, don't, is essentially what I would say. Yeah. It just means you don't have a level of pressure that isn't needed in our industry, I don't think. Yeah.
Do you guys feel like, this is something me and Nathan have talked about recently, do you guys feel like there's a little bit of like the market's saturated with knife makers and that's why it's hard to sell knives?
Absolutely. I don't think so much at our level. I think it's really saturated in kind of like the mid to lower end. I think it's getting more saturated in kind of like the more expensive level. I think my theory that I kind of came up with at Blade Show this year, because I talked to, person after person after person after person that was all like, oh, I'm a knife maker, I'm a knife maker, I'm a knife maker. I think that because knife making has become so accessible, thanks to you guys.
Yeah.
That
entirely your fault.
Yeah. You know what? How dare you?
You know how often people will legitimately tell me, like, they'll be like, all these 7 people used
Francis,
to buy steel from me.
when you invented Forge and Fire, you really did a number on it.
They'll tell me, like, they used to buy steel from me. Now they make their own Damascus.
Yep.
Like, you've worked me out of a job, and that makes me feel bad. I mean, it does. But at the same time, like, those people are now producing Damascus and making beautiful knives and they, whatever. But
yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird kind of dichotomy.
What I was going to say is I think that a lot of the people that would have become collectors became knife makers instead.
Sure.
So, like, I think that there's a lot less collectors nowadays than there was 20 years ago. And I think it's because knife making has become so accessible with online classes, so much information. 15 years ago, you wanted to buy a press, you could maybe buy it from
Riverside,
Tommy McNabb, maybe.
Big Blue, maybe 15 years ago.
But yeah, I think that and then like belt grinders have become far more available.
Once again, there's a ton of brands for those now too.
Yes. Yep.
You want a 2x72, it used to be just a couple.
Wirtz, KMG, Bader, Burking.
Yeah, and now it's like everyone has their own design. And not only that, but there's like build your own kits that people are selling.
Yep.
And you don't even have to buy a machine anymore. You can just buy the plans.
Yep.
So grinders are even worse than presses in that aspect.
Yes.
Even abrasives. Like when we first started, you had access to whatever, surplus industrial stuff that some other company was using. So, typically the wrong grit or the wrong media or something like that, and that's just what you had to deal with. Like we all use ceramic belts for the most part today. Try going back and using aluminum oxide belts and see how fun that is. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's atrocious. So the fact that everything's more available, is definitely a factor.
And I don't know if that has affected how, the collector market, but that was like the one I thought about that, I was like, that's the only thing that to me makes sense in the decline in collectors and the rise in knife makers, in the amount of knife makers. It seems like it's a pretty, like, those people that are going to be interested in knives no matter what. It seems like it's a similar amount, but it's, Like blade show attendance doesn't seem to be down, but yeah, the number of collectors definitely seem to be this year. Yeah.
But I also think, we can't let 1 year.
Very true.
Yeah.
Right.
We can't base everything off 1 year, we'll have to.
Yeah. Shelley Knight was saying that this year was really similar to 2009, and then it bounced back hardcore.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah. It's and 2008 was the big economy and the housing market crash and all that, and so, I think that a lot of times getting people like you guys on here is really good insight for people, and we've never really utilized it to really impact people in the way that they're operating their business. And I think that's maybe a disservice to the people that listen to the podcast, is we can offer them knowledge to better themselves in some way, even that if that is like, hey homie,
go get a job.
Yeah, go get a job, sell 4 or 5 knives, make it your passion, not your job, and you're gonna have a lot more fun doing it.
For sure.
I know that when I sell a hammer, it'll take me 6-8 months to make it.
Yeah.
But if I just want to go make a hammer and I can do whatever I want, I can make that in an hour and a half, and I have a fun time, and then I just give it away.
We had one of the guys that we stayed with in Tennessee, Brandon Franklin. He just got a job after like 2 years of being a maker full time, and he's like, I feel like I lost 2 years of time. He's like, because I would have had so much more fun in the shop, and I would have progressed so much more quickly if I could work on the things that I wanted to work on and not just cranking out stuff to make money.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
I think we're probably hitting our time limit, and I think that because Evan gave me the swirly finger emoji, which means I either need to raise my boom or we need to shut it down.
Wrap it up.
We just did a rigging class as our safety class. This is up.
Oh, yeah.
This is
Okay.
down.
Oh, nice.
So I got to raise my boom. Well, Jackson, do you have anything that you want to pitch? Any classes you're doing, or any big things that are going on that you want people to tune into to pay attention to?
Well, I've had this loose idea of, doing some kind of class on titanium Damascus. Doing something filmed, something kind of nice. But, if people want to do that, let me know. Because if no one wants it, then I absolutely won't try and do that. This
is not a personal passion project.
Yeah,
this is for sale.
Exactly.
You need to make money off of it.
Yeah,
Got
exactly.
it.
I'll sign up for that.
Cool.
That sounds
Yeah.
good.
So
Yeah, that's something Logan would be into too. Anything titanium, he's
he's
on.
Been doing it
What
for
a
a little
nerd.
while now. So I think
idiot. He's not listening to this. We can say whatever we want.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been doing that for a little while now, and I think I've finally got a bit of a handle on it. So
Cool.
If people are interested, let me know, and if there's enough interest, then
It's
we'll
very
see-
cool.
see what we
It's
can do.
very, very cool.
It's really not fun and expensive, but
Yeah,
it is cool.
Yeah,
right?
it's not fun.
Yeah, but
That
it
way
is,
other people don't start doing it.
it is.
well, when
it
you
is super
sculpt an
cool.
entire handle out of it,
Yeah, and in my
pull up on his Instagram,
in my
he did
MS
it.
set there, this is one thing I really wanted to have in the set was a handle that made out of titanium Damascus. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And
I bet the old guys in the ABS just hated that, didn't they?
No one said anything, but I'm sure there were a few people that didn't like it. So that's
Yeah.
one solid block of titanium Damascus, and that took more abrasive than the entire rest of the set combined.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, there was 34 40 grit belts in shaping that handle, and
How much is a 40 grit belt in Australia?
some of the ones they were using about $20 Australian. The rougher ceramic ones.
20 Australians, like 15 or 16
Something like
American.
that. Yeah. So like that really hurt.
Yeah.
And also it catches on fire. Like if you look at it wrong, it's just like, but it looks super cool.
It does look super cool.
Super cool. But yeah, I would appreciate people.
Will, you're on camera.
people
I'm trying to do the math on how much money that is. That's a lot.
But yeah, I would really appreciate if people reach out and let me know
34 times
if they're
20.
Yeah,
34 times 20 is $680.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just
to-
times it by 2 and then add a 0. 20. It's a little trick.
I just did it.
Yeah. Any Hoozle. Will, do you have anything that people need to pay attention to?
Oh, man.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. Well, I'm just kidding. You can pinch.
You know what? Never mind. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I have.
Okay, Marty's like, we're out.
all right, time to go. No, yeah, I have. I don't really want to jump the gun on it, but I'm going to have, hopefully starting a new business when I get back to Montana. So keep an eye out for that.
Cool.
It'll be affecting everybody.
Yeah, I've heard little bits about it. It sounds like it's going to be really fun.
very exciting stuff coming up.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also, once again, brings back jobs to America, which is really important. And we should do a whole freaking episode with people that employ Americans and how they stay afloat with people employed in their communities, because I think that is going to be huge over the next few years. We just cannot afford to keep sending jobs out to other places.
Like Australia.
It's ruining our economy. We're gonna start with the upside downers.
Apparently that's a thing we're called down there.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I don't mind.
There's worse things to be called, right? Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
All right, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Have a good day.
Oh my gosh.
I never know how to end it.
All right, Marty, come get you some headset. Get you a headset on. That way we can get a thumbnail for the.
Flip it.
Yeah. Come get you a little headset on. Do you want to try and put a headset on?
Brandon just texted me. He said, "Hey, what's that Australian feller's name? I want to start following him on the Instagram."
Marty, come here. All right. And turn and sit and back up. On the 2 paws, please. Come on. Ragdolling on me. On the 2 paws. Come on. No, but stay on the couch. Sit. Sit. Right there. Right there. Hey. No, Marty. I don't think it's gonna work. Sorry. I tried. How long was that?